Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of In Between Sessions. I'm your host, Lili. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Kansas City, and I'm thrilled you're here. While I love being a therapist and deeply believe in the power of therapy, I also know that most of the work that supports our mental health actually happens outside of the therapy room. We spend 1 hour a week, maybe, in session, and the other 167 hours, that's where the real life stuff happens. This podcast was born out of my curiosity. What does it actually look like for people to support their mental health between therapy sessions? What are the rituals, practices, and habits that help them stay grounded, connected, and growing? Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest, some therapists, but mostly people outside the mental health field, who will share their real-life ways of tending to their well-being. My hope is that by broadening the conversation, we can all find new strategies to care for ourselves. And at the end of each episode, I'll offer a takeaway for you to try out, and I'll be doing it right alongside you. So let's kick things off with an episode that's all about how to start. How do we build habits? How do we stay consistent with the things that matter to us? Today, I'm joined by the perfect person to help us get started, Beth DeMichele. Beth is an actor, a voice teacher, and a habit coach for creatives. Beth helps artists move from procrastination to progress by building sustainable, joy-filled habits through her community, 10 Minutes a Day Club, where she brings a playful and compassionate approach to accountability. In this conversation, we talk about making goals feel less overwhelming, the power of small steps, and how habit building can support your mental health, especially when you're trying something new. Beth shares how moving to a new city prompted her to reevaluate her routines and reconnect with the habits that keep her grounded. We talk about how self-compassion, flexibility, and creativity can be just as important as discipline when it comes to building habits that last. We also explore how building supportive communities can make the journey more joyful, more sustainable, and a whole lot less lonely. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hi, Beth DeMichele. What have you been doing in between sessions?
The short answer to that question is a lot of little things.
Yes. Okay. Say more about that.
Yeah. So a bit of just context about like the season that I'm in life right now. My husband and I just moved to an old new city a couple months ago. We moved back to the area that I grew up in after living in New York City for 10 years, 14 if you include the college years. So we are kind of exiting that like living in New York season and readapting to a new environment, new schedules, etc. So to kind of like keep making sure I'm establishing practices for myself that are healthy and good for me and keep kind of the machine running, I'm doing a lot of experimenting with like, what are the practices that support me in this new space, in this new kind of season of life. So I am experimenting with lots of things. I'm experimenting with reestablishing a meditation practice in the morning, doing a bit of like, let's move my body for 10 minutes in the morning. I have some voice therapy stuff and some physical therapy stuff. Let's try to do that for like 10 minutes each. So basically trying to loosely establish routines that I know have worked for me in the past and figuring out how do they fit in to my life here and now. So experimenting with lots of little things at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like you're like microdosing self-care.
That is an excellent way of saying that. That is completely correct.
And yeah, you're so right. It's like, that's such a big move and such a big life change. And I think that big changes like that, or even smaller changes like a new month or a new year, really inspire. It seems to just sort of be like natural human nature to inspire change and kind of like a reset. And I could really see, especially a big move like that, going either way, because it's like, here's this refresh. I want to like start all these new practices and do all these new things, but you don't have any of your old supports, like maybe your closest friends and your people and your routine and like your favorite local coffee shop and your usual place you go on a walk. Everything's different and you're trying to establish new norms in this, completely different context.
Yeah, that is completely true. The imagery that's been coming to my mind recently is, you know this about me, I love a good plant metaphor.
Of course.
So I had the realization that when you're repotting a plant,
Yes.
you have no choice but to look at the roots.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
You have no choice but to be like, oh, that's what it looks like under the soil. I've been paying so much attention to like the sprout and the leaves and the buds and the flowers that I had no idea. Like, that's what the root system looks like underneath of
Yes.
here. And it can be, now it feels exciting. Back when I was like first freshly taken out of the pot, it felt crazy. It
Yeah. And
felt
vulnerable.
Yes. So we are, now that we're settling into the new soil here, it's very much a season of learning. That's for dang sure.
Yeah. So how have you gone about like establishing a new normal and routine for yourself?
First of all, this was a hurdle to go over, but I think first of all, giving myself permission to let it be different every day.
Yeah.
I want to hit the ground running and just nail it right away, but we'll talk about this in a little bit too. But I run a community for creatives that has some accountability and some habit coaching. So this is literally something
Yeah.
I'm talking about all the time. I've got lots of habit building skills that I've needed to adapt because habit formation is not something I'm naturally good at.
Sure. Yeah.
So even with all those tools, it still is like, oh, some days this little, I'm trying to make it a pocket routine of like the morning routine
Hmm.
and just starting with that. I have the luxury of time right now because with the move, a bunch of slots in my schedule just haven't been filled yet.
Sure.
And that has been a little disorienting. I tend to work better when I know how my time is being accounted for. So
Yes.
I think how am I establishing it is I'm letting it be messy right now. I've got pillars that I'm kind of trying to hit. I'm in the morning we coffee, we breakfast, we move, we do some kind of spiritual mindful check-in, and we hygiene. Those are the pillars.
Yes. Great pillars.
Some days, even when I'm only doing those things for like 10 to 15 to 20 minutes at a time, that's a chunk of time.
Yeah,
That's a
definitely.
chunk of time. That doesn't happen in 1 hour. So some days, if I'm really locked in, it takes me to like 10, 15. And then other days it takes me to like noon.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know. So letting it be a little messy and letting it be information and go, oh, how interesting. This is what showed up today. This is what I wanted to start with today, rather than, as they say, shooting all over myself.
Exactly. Yes, kind of that openness. I like the idea of pillars that like these are just the things that I like really want to do or I was going to say have to do, but I think being a little bit more flexible is probably good.
Mhm.
And then just trying to make them happen at a point in your day that feels right. So maybe you get to all of them like you said by 10, 15, and maybe some days, other things are popping up, you're dealing with other things and so you don't get to it until a little bit later, and trying to have that sort of sense of, I think, playfulness and compassion, self-compassion. One thing that I talk with a lot of my clients about in therapy are what's called diffusion techniques. And diffusion techniques are anything that allow us to become sort of unhooked by our thoughts. When we go on those thought spirals and we're shaming ourselves, we're shooting ourselves, we're doing all of that. Diffusion techniques and skills allow you to kind of get out of that spiral and get that hook out of you. And one of them is pretty much exactly what you said, which is just to kind of approach it with that, I guess, kind of like humor and curiosity, and just notice and say, how fascinating that my brain is telling me that I have failed today because I didn't get through my entire routine by 10 a.m. How fascinating that it was really hard for me to sit down and meditate today, and just bring that level of interest and curiosity and self-compassion.
Yeah, that has been pretty big. I'm so glad that you said that. And I didn't know that's what they were called. I just learned something. Great. Uh, so, because I think once I felt like, okay, we're mostly unpacked. We're still not completely unpacked. We're mostly
Sure, sure.
unpacked. So I was like, again, ready to hit the ground running. And something I am noticing in all of this is my relationship to like productivity and efficiency and
Yeah.
optimization and stuff. And it's something that I've always wished I was better at.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm doing the wrong thing when I'm not being quote unquote productive. So if I'm not
Yes.
starting work at a certain time, if I'm not like utilizing the most of my time, then I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
And what you just expressed, because I, again, had the time to explore, I went, oh, that's interesting. Oh, why do I think that doing 10 minutes of a sun salutation is not as important as answering the email 30 minutes sooner?
Yeah.
And I think, having that time to notice has been really important for establishing like what do I default to? How do I talk to myself?
Yeah.
And what am I going to choose to do about it next? And that takes practice. Like I tried to start doing the like noting before the move.
Mhm.
The season before the move was turbulent to say the least.
Chaos, I'm sure.
So chaotic. That was very much like survival mode then.
Yes.
But because the feelings and thoughts were so acute,
Mhm.
my therapist has helped me work at paying attention to what they are and where they live in my body and what do we do about it. So weirdly, luckily, I was able to practice that when things were really hard and very chaotic. But now that I'm a bit more in healing mode, I feel like I can approach it with a little bit more curiosity and play.
Absolutely. And I'm also having the thought that being in a different environment probably reflects patterns back to you in a new way because you're like, I'm in a new space and I'm recognizing this familiar thought or this familiar pattern that I had in my, New York City apartment or whatever, but I'm in this new space. And so it's a bit more obvious to me. Like I feel like I notice it more. And I wonder if that's contributed at all to your ability to sort of notice that with a little bit more detachment.
Yeah, I think so. And I think because I am just starting with a bit more of a blank slate too,
Mhm.
that, I think you're totally right. It's like what is consistent with me versus what was consistent with my circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned earlier that you have kind of an accountability group with some creatives. Say a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So in 2021, I created basically the club that I needed. So
Yeah.
flashing backwards, and for some extra context, I'm an actor. It's been the dream to be on Broadway since I was 8 years old, and living in New York City, it was just the constant like, how do I work the job that gives me the money, but also gives me the flexibility to audition? And so it was a long time trying to like find the thing that worked. So I was working full time at a job that I'd worked at part time for years and years. In 2019, they offered me a full time job. They're just like, you can continue being flexible as long as you meet your hours. Then we don't care if some of them happen at home. We don't care if like some of them happen at 10 p.m. Like just
Sure.
get the work done, hit your hours. And I was with a team of people that I trusted, who trusted me. It was like stable enough money, stable enough security while I still had the flexibility to do what I wanted. And I was like,
Yeah.
I did it. I figured it out.
I struck the perfect balance.
Hooray. That was the fall of 2019.
Yep.
And then in 2020, obviously, we all know what happened. The theater industry shuts down. I'm working remotely from that job for about a month, but then I'm furloughed for about 6 months and then officially let go after a while. So kind of when all of that was happening, not only did the organizing principle of my life, which was the theater pursuit, go away temporarily, but also so did the organizing principle of my day, which was this job. And like I said, I tend to thrive with like knowing what's supposed to happen at any given moment. I do my best when like somebody else sets the bar and the expectation and says, here's how to clear it and when we want you to clear it by.
Yeah.
But when it's up to me to decide where I'm putting the bar, how high is the bar, how high should the bar be? When that's up to me, I flounder. I flounder so much. So luckily, around the time that I was, not working that job anymore, one of my voice teachers was like, I was expressing, I don't know what to do next. I feel like I have to start completely over.
Yeah.
And she was like, I think you would make a great teacher. And I'm looking for some folks to like I'm running out of room on my schedule. I would love to pass some people to you. I can teach you how to teach,
Yeah.
etc. So I started teaching voice lessons, which was lovely. But a lot of my students were feeling the same thing that I was feeling, which is
Yes.
like, I want to get better. Oh my gosh, I care so much about this. I want to use this time to cultivate my skills, and I'm not working right now. But
Right.
the week goes by and I don't practice. What the heck happens to me? And I was like, dude,
Yes.
me too. I don't know. So,
Relatable.
uh-huh. So I kind of was like, this is not a motivation problem.
Mhm.
And it's not a work ethic problem. Like, these people are hard workers. And I was like, I think it's a habits problem. So let's follow that thread a bit. I did some deep dives into like the habit books that are out there, and how our habits formed, and some I liked more than others. I think Atomic Habits was the one that like really helped me out. It helped me be like, oh, just because I'm quote unquote a professional doesn't mean I need to be jumping into putting in 8 hours a day right now.
Right.
Like,
Right.
his philosophies are very much get into the habit of showing up and then let it build from there. And I feel like so much of the habit space is like, get up at 5 a.m. And if you're not doing this, then you're a piece of garbage. And like,
Correct.
there's so much shame and so much pressure
Yeah.
that it was so refreshing to be like, actually, how habits are formed are through repetition. So truly just hit repeat over and over and over again, even if it's microscopic.
Yeah.
Just let it be tiny and then let it build from there, rather than quote unquote disciplining and willpowering yourself into changing your current patterns. Because like, even during the shutdown, I found my ways into patterns
Right.
automatically without trying to.
Yeah.
I was getting up at the same time every day. How I felt about what time I was getting up is a different story.
Sure. Yeah.
But when you're building new patterns, you're kind of also breaking current patterns.
Yes.
So you're doing two jobs at once. So why don't we make the creating a new pattern? Why don't we make that job as easy and simple as possible? So it was kind of this like, the club came to be because there was kind of this convergence of, here's what I keep seeing across all the habit information is start small is
Mhm.
one, and include other people.
Yeah.
Those were basically the main two, because I am not alone in the I do better when somebody else is in agreement of where that bar is
Yeah.
with me,
Yeah.
when somebody else is witnessing me. And I think sometimes we're like, it doesn't count unless I can just do it by myself. But it's just like,
Yeah.
why? Our brain is designed to like want to impress other people.
Sure. Yeah. Like that community and accountability aspect.
Mhm.
Totally.
And it makes the lift easier when you have included other people. So I kind of was like, how do we combine these two things? The fact that tiny steps is the way in, and doing it with other people watching is like the way in. Again, the way we approach accountability is not like, oh, you didn't do it today, then like we're shaming you. No, we truly just cheer you on when you do it. And that's for a lot of the people in the community. They're like, if I'm super tired and don't even feel like doing my 10 minutes, I'll be like, oh, but I'm going to feel really good when I get to post that I did my 10 minutes afterward.
Yeah.
So it's just 10 minutes. Just let me do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone is counting on me. Someone believes that I can do it.
Mhm. And showing up for yourself is showing up for the community.
So you're talking about like doing your 10 minutes. So tell me a little bit more about like what this group looks like and how 10 minutes contributes to forming new habits.
Yeah. So this group is very much geared towards artists, creatives, creators of all disciplines and of varying levels of, I don't know, commitment. We have hobbyists, people who are just like, I work corporate, but I know creativity needs to be a part of my life. Or
Yeah.
I'm a professional and like I'm writing a new play and like
Yeah.
hold me accountable. So it's very much mostly for people who are creating creative practices or practices that support their creativity. So sometimes people will be like, I hate working out, but I am trying to get into show shape. So like, let's do it. So that's kind of the who is part of it at the moment. And it's very much for people like me who we know that no matter how simple the task is or how important the task is, it's not getting done unless somebody else is part of it. So that's kind of the who. And then was your next question like the how?
Yeah, like what does it look like?
Yeah. So basically, we actually just restructured. So we used to work in 8-week sessions with like a cohort every 8 weeks. Now, just because I wanted people to be able to join however worked best for them and could join whenever, we're now a tiered membership subscription. So the first tier is we have a community platform, and on that community platform, you kind of like, we have a community page where we can share struggles and questions and here's my roadblocks and here's what I did and look at what I accomplished. And so kind of a community page. I give little prompts for people to kind of think about how they're progressing, little check-in moments. And there's also a progress report journal. So that's where people will write either like, did my 10 minutes, done, or they'll be like, I did my 10 minutes and here's how it felt and here's the finished product and so it gives people a lot of flexibility. So that's the first tier. The second tier is called Habit Builders. And in there we have a course where like for people like me who had a really hard time figuring out how to build a habit from scratch, I kind of walk us through a process kind of from the here's how habits are formed. And it's very much designed towards you and your schedule and your tendencies and your goals and things. So I walk through a process there just to basically figure out how can we reduce the friction.
Yeah.
Because even doing 10 minutes, sometimes there can just be a lot of resistance there.
Yeah.
Here's like where the common points of resistance are. Here's where the common obstacles are. Here's how we either remove them or address them. So I kind of have this little like repeatable process. Then the third tier is like weekly check-ins with people. So people can have more time to get more nitty-gritty about here's where I'm struggling. What do we do? And it's kind of more of a group coaching in real time moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's different ways to engage with it, but the pillars are a growth mindset, community, keeping it simple, and keeping the joy in this process.
Yeah. So the sort of, I guess, commitment when someone joins this group or this community is that they will spend 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, working towards a specific goal, or is it towards anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 10 minutes a day is like the shortcut in, but some people, part of our process is setting our rules around it. So like, what actually are you committing to? So let that be up to you. Here's some guidelines and frameworks and stuff. But like when you say every day, do you mean every day? Or do you mean every weekday? Or do you mean every day that you don't have an audition? Or do you mean every day except when you're on vacation? So like, let's get usually just like knowing what you are agreeing with yourself to is super helpful. So we kind of take you through that process of like, what's your agreement with yourself? And then you hit the ground running with that. And the practice that you choose is up to you and the goal, or up to the participant, and the goal is up to the participant. So an example, a friend of mine is like a small business idea. So she's like, I'm spending 10 minutes a day just taking whatever the next step in building my business is. Some people are, again, like working on a novel. So I'm spending 10 minutes. If it's me staring out the window for 10 minutes thinking about what I might write, that counts. Or putting pen to paper. So for some folks, the goal is simply just getting into that habit of showing up to their practice. Sometimes that's the goal. And for others, it's a bit more like project oriented, where like there is a finish line at some point. So it just depends.
Yeah. And do you find that if people can kind of show up for those 10 minutes, that they end up doing like more than 10 minutes worth, or is that like not even the goal?
So I'm so glad you said that, because it happens all the time. So that is not the goal. Again, our goal is just, if you did the 10 minutes, you did it. Hooray, celebrate. Like that's awesome. But what happens is people will, again, have a hard day, be like, I'm not doing my practice. But then they'll go, okay, it's just 10 minutes. And they'll set the timer for 10 minutes. And our agreement as a community is once the 10-minute timer is up, the one that you set for yourself, whenever you're doing it, when that's up, you have permission to be done.
Yes.
You did it. But sometimes people will go, wait, let me just finish up this thought.
Yes.
Or hold on, let me just I know what the next step is now. Let me just take that real quick. And then they might find a flow state and get really into the zone with it and stuff. So a lot of what we found is starting is the hardest part.
Yeah.
So if we can make that hurdle low to the ground,
yes,
then we're in the race. You know what I mean? We're not intimidated by the hurdle that we feel we need to leap over. It's just let me just step over the hurdle. Well, I can do the next hurdle. Then, so again, it's not necessarily the goal, but it is a nice little bonus when those days happen.
If I'm remembering correctly, because I have read Atomic Habits before, I think one of the examples in the book is trying to build the habit and the routine of going to the gym and literally just starting with putting on your workout shoes, your running shoes, whatever. And then that's it for the day. And then you do that for a while and then you drive to the gym and that's it for the day. You don't even go inside. Which to me, I remember reading that and being I feel like if I drove all the way to the gym, I'd be I might as well just go in. Let me just do it. But he, if I'm remembering correctly, the author was sort of no, don't go in the gym yet. Build the habit of driving to the gym until you're at the point where you're I gotta get in there. And then agree or commit, I guess, to walking on the treadmill for 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever. So yeah, I'm just curious your thoughts on kind of that tension of when do you just say nope, I'm not going into the gym, and when do you say hey, I want to, so I'm gonna ride this motivation.
Yeah, I love that story so much because again, as highly motivated people, once we have the motivation, we want to just go all in on it. But what gets tricky is then if we have a great day, then all of a sudden we're oh shoot, an hour of strength training is now the new standard. How am I gonna keep that up or top it? My thought is, yes, I love the spend a week just putting on your sneakers or get in the parking lot. And I kind of think if you feel inspired to go, go do it. But then don't let yourself make that the new standard until you're completely ready for it to be the new standard. Yeah. And especially because I'm working with a lot of creatives, inspiration is a fickle mistress. And so when she shows up, you want her to hang around for a little while. Yeah. But don't fool yourself into thinking that your best day is from now on going to be your everyday.
I love that. Yeah. Your best day is not going to be your everyday. And I even really appreciate what you were saying about as highly motivated people, because it probably won't surprise you to hear that this is something that a lot of my clients struggle with is, a lot of them will be I just don't have any motivation, or I'm just really lazy, or, I saw on your website the quote, turning passion into progress. And I think that bridge between passion to progress, idea to action is so overwhelming for so many people. And I don't really believe that it's helped by this internalized belief that I'm just lazy, I'm not motivated, what's wrong with me? And so I think acknowledging that, yeah, you are a motivated person, you have motivation, you're feeling this tension about not doing the thing that you're interested in doing. So there's clearly motivation there. It's just setting some of this scaffolding or support or framework around achieving this goal.
Yep. Some of my club members witnessed me go on just a rant and rampage about the idea of discipline.
Discipline. My goodness, yes.
And this is not my first time saying this, but it helps me remember sometimes. I had the realization that trying to build a habit or a routine with only discipline is like trying to build a piece of furniture with only hammers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need a hammer sometimes. You do. I believe when you need the discipline is truly the moment before you say yes to something. That yes could be 1 minute.
Yeah.
So yes, we do need a little discipline, but so many of us, myself included, are going through life believing that we don't have any discipline. And I'm
Yeah.
like, probably what's more true is that we don't have the plan, the strategy
Yeah.
for how we're going to show up, and we don't have the accountability. And that feels more changeable than I just need to up my discipline. What is
Yeah.
that? What does
How
that
do you
look
do that?
like?
Yeah.
That sounds miserable.
Yes.
So a lot of what we do is we try to identify what are the other tools in the toolkit
Yeah.
besides the hammer. That's a blueprint. That's looking at your calendar and going, where am I doing my 10 minutes? That's setting a cue as like, that's the cue, response, reward is the like loop that forms a habit, that repetition.
Yes.
So, like, what is my cue? How do I reward myself? And kind of getting really nitty gritty about what's the strategy and
Yeah.
who's keeping me on the hook. That is much more attainable, practical, and produces better results than quote unquote upping your discipline.
Exactly. Yeah, that word is a big word for me. A lot of the work that I do with clients is on their relationships with food and their bodies, and there is so much language around like, oh, I failed at my last diet because I just don't have any discipline. And so for me, I feel rage in the pit of my stomach when I hear the word discipline or people being shamed for a lack of discipline. So I think one other element of it as well is this goal realistic or even worthwhile? If you don't have discipline to maintain a 1,200 calorie diet, maybe it's because 1,200 calories is not enough food. So you're not going to discipline your way into your body not having a biological need for more than 1,200 calories. Like that's not reasonable or realistic. And so, is it a realistic goal? And then is it worthwhile? What are you going to gain if you discipline yourself into reducing your food intake? Is that really going to solve the problems that you perceive in your life? And so, yeah, hearing that, of course, yes, discipline can still be a tool in the toolkit. Discipline could even look like, in this example, being disciplined enough to choose to fuel your body appropriately and eat enough food, but it's not the only way to achieve these results.
Yeah. And you hit on something so important, which is like, why?
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 Yeah.
Gretchen Rubin talks about this. She wrote some books that I love and inspired a bunch of 10 Minutes a Day Club stuff. Better Than Before is the one that I love. And then she has a couple other ones as well. But I don't know if she coined the term, but this is who I learned it from, the red herring habit.
I don't know that.
So this is the habit that you think you should be implementing.
Yes.
But in your heart of hearts, it's not actually that important to you, and
Yeah.
you're not actually going to do it. The example she gives in the book is a friend of hers was like, I need to work out. I need to work. Working out is good for you. There's so many health benefits. I should be working out. But she is like a single mom of 2 middle schoolers. So maybe she could just do 10 minutes a day or something. But what seemed to help her, and Gretchen Rubin helped her friend realize, like, I think it's going to take so much for you to commit to working out right now. What if you just decided it's a question of values?
Yeah.
The reason you're not working out is because you're taking care of your children, which is very much in alignment with your values. So in your heart of hearts, if you know that you are not interested, nor do you have the time to commit to working out right now, what if you just stopped worrying about it?
Yes. At what point is the distress about not working out more harmful than the working out would do good?
Yep.
Yeah.
So if the why is not clear for you right now, then it's time to reevaluate. So there's, I don't know who did this one, but the why rabbit hole. So, or like the 4-year-old test. So I want to sing every day. Why? Because I want to be a professional singer. Why? Because I've always wanted to be on Broadway. Why? I really like stories and sharing stories through music with people. Why? And like getting to the value of it is really important. First of all, that's motivating. So if you do find the core value that you're like, yep, this feels great.
Yeah.
Then that's a sign that, yes, continue forward. But if the why ends up being like, because I think people will see me differently if I'm like this, or it's the root of it has like, again, those roots, if the root of it is a shame-based root, it's probably time to reevaluate or pick something else that has a more clear and better why.
I love that. One of the types of therapy that I use in practice is called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT for short. You were familiar?
Well, mostly because acceptance has been a huge part of my my life recently. So, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And the diffusion techniques that I mentioned earlier are techniques from acceptance and commitment therapy. And values work is a huge part of ACT. And they sort of define dysfunction being living out of alignment with your values, and optimal, health as living in alignment with your values. And so what a lot of ACT therapists will do with their clients is do a values activity to get clear. I think we all kind of know this idea of like, yeah, we're motivated by our values, we're driven by our values. But how often do we really sit down and think to ourselves, like, what do I actually value? Like, what is important to me? And I love the idea of using those values as kind of a jumping off point for goals, for forming habits, and they really can act as like a compass in life.
Yeah. A big part of 10 Minutes a Day Club as well is trying to get people to be intentional about adding the good stuff to their life. Because again, so many of us are using habits for the things that feel like a drag, but our lives are made up of our days. And a lot of us are saving the stuff that we love and enjoy for quote unquote our free time.
Yeah.
Which when's that? Like,
never heard of her. Yeah.
So using almost like countering habits are for the hard parts. It's just like, no, let's be intentional about the stuff that we love and care about and that bring us joy and a sense of play. Let's use our habit building energy towards that instead.
Yes, absolutely. Something I've been thinking about in what you've shared is it sounds like people get a lot out of being on the receiving end of that accountability. But I'm curious what you've noticed about what people get out of being the accountability partner for the other people in this club.
Yeah. What's coming to mind right now is something I like to say is like, the more people post, the more people post.
Yeah.
So again, and sometimes we can be a little like shy about our accomplishments and things.
Yeah.
So when we say, no, you are helping the community by bragging that you did your 10 minutes today.
Yeah.
And your accomplishment might be somebody else's cue to go,
yeah.
look how great they feel. Okay, I can do my 10 minutes right now, So that's kind of the experience people have had, both on the like, the checking in when I do it feels really good. And because we are in community and we are legitimately cheering each other on, we're not in competition with each other.
Right.
When somebody else has a win, we feel like we contributed to that.
Yeah.
So it's this very like cyclical experience.
Yeah, wins beget wins. That's super cool. I'm curious if there's anybody who's listening to this who's thinking like, this sounds great, but like I'm not a creative person. Like I don't identify as creative. I guess one, would this group still be for them? And if not, what resources would you recommend for them?
Yeah. So our community is for creatives. I kind of think everybody's creative in some
Agreed.
way. So I say still give the club a try. I'm happy to hop on a call with anybody to see if it's a good fit. We offer a free 14-day trial to the first tier. So if it's just like, I just want to see if I can benefit from this, then we've got options. But if really what you are trying to do is not a artistic hobby or a playful kind of thing, then I have a reading list that I'm happy to like send to people. That's a lot of good habit stuff, a lot of good growth mindset kinds of things that apply to all apply to all disciplines. So I'd say like, yeah, let's start with 10 minutes a day club, but then also like make your own and make your own accountability group for whatever it is that you're working on, a book club or something like that.
I love that. Yeah, that people can kind of tap into their own community and, create this together, because I think one of the things that we've sort of shown a light on in this episode so far is that a lot of people experience this feeling of, I have a great idea. I'm feeling motivated to do something, and yet why am I not getting myself to do it? And you mentioned that starting small and including other people are the best things that you can kind of do to fuel that momentum. And that can look like, that's broad enough to look like anything.
For sure. Yeah. There was a season of my life where I was trying to wake up earlier. So I truly was just like, I'm texting this group of people a thumbs up when I wake up in the morning.
Yes. I love that. I'm alive.
Yep. It can be accountability can be as simple and as little as that. So I have some of my voice students will be like, can I just text you a thumbs up when I practice? I'm like, please do. I'll know exactly what it means. And that's great.
That's beautiful. I love that. This has been such a great conversation. I've enjoyed talking to you so much. And so now I'm curious what you're going to do before your next session.
So this conversation has like reminded me a bit of funny, and I wasn't expecting this to go here, but I feel like a play and curiosity has been a theme that's been continuing to pop up. And I realized I neglected something from my little morning routine that I think I'm going to double down on. I accidentally developed a lollygagging practice.
I think you're the first person in the history of the world to say lollygagging practice. What is that? I'm obsessed.
So it for sure came about by accident. I was trying to do a journaling practice, but I would write a sentence and then just stare out the window and just like have conversations with myself. And I realized that that's actually how I process my thoughts and feelings and emotions better, is just kind of like looking out the window, letting my mind run amok. And I found myself being like, come on, Beth, focus on your journal. No, stop spacing out. Focus on your journal. And I'm like, I actually think this is what the point of journaling is. So like, what if I let myself sit there and space the heck out while I drink my coffee, let my mind wander to where it wants to go? I'm kind of using my meditation practice to like put my mind back together. But I think, thanks to this inspiration, I think rather than trying to like speed up that process, if I have the time, I'm just going to let myself lollygag. I think that's where I'm finding a lot of nice connect the dots moments right now. So what if I lean into that? So I'm going to lollygag a little bit more, or at least be more okay with it, because I was already doing it.
Yes. I love that so much that, I think when we have a routine or goals or like these pillars that you were talking about, sometimes there can be this, I don't know, this like addiction to checking it off the list. And so, like I'm going to get it done and then I'm going to check it off. And it's such a cliche to say like it's about the journey, not the destination. But it's like if we're just focusing on checking it off the list, like are we really getting out of it like what we wanted? And so this idea of like, I even love the word choice of lollygagging. Like it's such a silly word. And so just to incorporate kind of that lollygagging energy into whatever it is that you're doing, whatever habit that you're forming, I think can help quiet that inner disciplinarian who tries to come out and to just, increase that enjoyment and that curiosity and that play within these important habits.
Yeah. And I think having the realization of like, Beth, if that's what you're doing in the morning, it's not causing any harm. And like, so who cares? Who cares? And I think, again, just giving myself some grace with it. And I've had some lovely little aha moments in my lackadaisical conversations with myself. So like, let's just keep going.
Yeah, I feel like it's like I don't know if this is like an official thing. I reference it all the time and I don't even know if it's like a real official thing, but like the shower principle that like when you're in the shower, like you can't really do anything. There's like water everywhere. You can't be like writing or on your phone or like doing whatever. And so like your mind just has a minute to like just relax. And it's such a sensory experience of like the sound of the water, the smell of your shampoo, the warmth of the water. There's so many senses being sort of activated that I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it just really fuels creative thinking.
Yeah, I think there's a book out there about, it's called Bored and Brilliant, which like gets it a little bit
Yes.
into the science of just like, no, creativity happens when you let yourself get bored. I sometimes feel like I'm like, what's bored? But
Sure.
what is that?
Yep.
But that very similar idea of just like when you can let your mind wander. Some people find it when they're out on a walk. When your mind can wander, that's when like creativity happens. So yes, sometimes we will want to have a practice of like, I am now sitting down to write. And Seth Godin talks a lot about like just show up and like you don't need to have something to say to write, just write and then you'll have something to say. Like I
Yes.
completely believe that.
Yeah.
And sometimes just like no goals moments and just let your mind do what it wants. And I think the morning is like kind of a nice clean slate
Yeah.
where you're not necessarily acting in response to something that's already happened. You're just kind of like, where am I? What's happening today inside my heart, soul, and mind?
Absolutely. Beth, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate all of your insight into habits, how people can turn passion into progress and stop shaming themselves for their lack of motivation, their perceived lack of motivation. And I thank you so much for being on In Between Sessions.
I'm so honored. Thank you so much for doing this.
I loved starting this podcast journey with a conversation about habits because honestly, if we want to try out new ways to care for our mental health, we're going to need systems that help us follow through, even on the days when we don't feel like it. Beth's insight about how just 10 minutes a day can move you closer to your goals really stuck with me, and I hope it inspires you to think about one habit or one practice that you'd like to begin or return to. What I also appreciated was how much this conversation went beyond habit hacks. It was about approaching ourselves with curiosity, compassion, and flexibility, especially when our lives are shifting or we feel stuck. Beth offered such a refreshing take on accountability and discipline, challenging the idea that we need to just try harder and instead encouraging us to start smaller, get creative, and find support. If you're curious about joining the 10 Minutes a Day Club, Beth is generously offering In Between Sessions listeners 20% off your first 3 months. Just use the code LILY20 at checkout, which is written out in the show notes, and I'll link everything you need in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to follow the show, leave a review, or share this with a friend who's working towards something big or small. And if you decide to try out a 10-minute habit after listening, I want to hear about it. You can find me on Instagram at InBetweenSessionsPodcast or email me at the address in the show notes. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time in Between Sessions.